Hello everyone, it's Laura here, and I'm an artist who likes to do coloring, painting, and drawing tutorials. So if you like that kind of stuff, you want to go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Without any further ado, let's get started!
Alright, so I'm using Copic marker E00 to start with. Now, in order to do this particular mixed media page, I'm going to start off with a marker base. And I'm aware that not everybody likes to do this. I'm just showing you one way to complete a page. In art, I want to express that there is no right or wrong way to do anything. Everybody has a different technique, different approaches. So in this demonstration, I'm just going to show you the way that I'm completing this page. I'm not saying that this is the best way or the only way, but rather that this is the way that I like to do it, and I just wanted to share my process. So you can see here I'm just finding the lights and darks. I like using Copic marker because it's more forgiving than the water-based markers. So what I mean by that is you can actually change the colors. You can go over them and change them. But you can see here I'm just sort of trying to pick out the lights and darks. So what I'm doing here is I've decided to go with a top light. It's coming slightly from the left, like our left, not her left. And I'm just going through the face, and with my knowledge of portraiture, I'm adding highlights and shadows. But you can see that this marker process is actually pretty messy looking, and the page won't start to look good for quite some time. At first, when I just was beginning using marker, this would stress me out a lot and I didn't like it. But now I've just learned to approach the marker base sort of like a tone tan page. So what I mean is, a lot of people like to start their drawings on like a toned tan surface, and they find it to be easier to do faces. Well, I'm just basically finding anywhere where there would be shadow and just putting a layer of marker down. I'm not worried about if it's perfect. I'm not worried about streaks or funny lines. That can all be adjusted with a pencil later. So it's a really fun and messy process. You can see, like right now it looks okay. There will be a part later on in this video where it will look absolutely terrible, but that's okay. As long as you know to like push through that really bad looking stage, it won't be too bad, and it usually turns out really good. So what I like about markers is that it's really fast. So what I'm doing here is I'm just like checking out myself in the mirror and seeing like how light falls on my own. Oh, email. Let's see here. It's fine. So sorry about that. So checking out my own reflection and trying to figure out where the lights and darks would fall, and then adding that to the drawing here. And you can use yourself as a reference. I do that all the time. You can also like look at pictures and other things or other people. But that's how I get very realistic stuff. Okay, I'm going to swap over to Copic E000. This is a lighter color, and I'm going to try and blend that into the white of the page and start making this look more like a face and less like a strange like robot or something. But I find that using a shadow color for the start of the marker base really does help me find where the darks go on the face. So now I'm just blending that in, and again, I'm not being super precise. I'm not really stressing too much about being perfect here. We're going to smooth everything out with pencil later. So it's kind of horrible looking, but it will get better, I promise. So here's where I'm talking about where like you can lighten up areas. Once this marker dries, it will actually dry lighter and it overrides the darker color under. Alright, so now I'm going into the cheekbone. I felt like I had too much dark in there, so I'm just lightening it up. And now I'm also giving some darker color to the lighter side of the face. And also just under the nose area here. And what's fun about coloring and art in general is that there's really so many different approaches and ways to do things. I plan to do a lot of tutorials coming up in the future, and I just want to say, if there's something that you really want me to show you how to do, I'm happy to do that. But in general, I'm just going to show you the way that I approach things. And every artist is different, so my work may not work for you, the way I do things. But that doesn't mean that your way is wrong or bad or something. Every single artist has a different way, and we're all completely unique. And that's what makes art amazing. And I really do believe that colorists are artists. You guys are creating artwork. So, yeah. Oh, okay. Let's swap over to the Copic blender. That's 0. What I'm doing here is I'm actually going to lighten up some areas that I felt I went too dark with. So this is like an eraser. Now, you can go overboard with this like I did. Like I was actually testing the paper to see how much I could saturate the page before it starts to really go crazy. And I did get a lot. I mean, this page is like soaking wet right now. But it's fun because I liked testing and pushing the paper to its limit to see how far it would go. And I found that actually I could layer and layer and layer. Now I'm going to fix what I did. So what happens is when you overblend with the Copics, then they tend to have like a water stain on the edges. But you can lightly kind of push that around until it blends out. But I was really satisfied with the way that the paper reacted to the marker. I could probably saturate the page and not worry too much about it. Which was really fun to find out. So I'm really glad about the paper that I chose in this book. Okay, so she doesn't look super great right now, but I'm going to add some red to her cheeks with the Copic R21. And again, this looks really aggressive and harsh, like really too dark. But we just want to add some pink tones to some areas like her nose. And later I'll add some to her mouth too. And again, this is going to be covered over. Oh, yeah, I forgot to show you the marker, but there you go. Later this will be covered over with pencils, so don't worry if it looks a little too harsh. Also, just as a note, the Copic markers dry about 1 to 2 shades lighter, so when you put it down it looks really dark, but then it lightens up as it dries. So that's really good to know. When I first started, I didn't know that, and I couldn't figure out why my colors were looking so washed out. But then over time, in experience, I just realized like they just dry lighter. So, alright, so you can see I just added a base color to her mouth. I left a little part on the bottom lip white. That'll be the shiny bits. Now I'm going to swap back over to Copic E000. And I'm just blending out that R21. And now I'm swapping over to Copic W3. This is like a warm gray. And I'm going to go in and add some, now this is a Mother Earth page, so I'm going to add some like cracks to her skin, almost like she's made of stone. Again, you don't have to do this. This is just my artistic interpretation. And you can do whatever you want. It's your coloring, it's your page. I also found a mistake in my drawing, so I'm sort of fixing that. But yeah, there's a lot of fun with this like cracked texture that I'm adding. And now I'm going to add some shadows just under the hairline and that flower there. And now I'm going to swap over. Let's see what color. Oh, we're back to E00. If it'll focus. There. Oh, there you go. Anyways, E00. It won't focus for some reason. Oh, there you go. Alright. And I forgot this little spot in her ear, so I'm just going to add that. And I'm also going through and just adding a little bit more to the eyelids. So I'm not super organized when I color. I just sort of color what I see when I see it. Like right now I'm adding a little shadow to the eyes there, the whites of the eyes with that. But yeah, I apologize for not being like super, like I don't have a really rigid process. And that's just how I work. It's kind of, I'm all over the place, but you know, everybody's different. Swapping over back to W3, that warm gray. And I'm going to add some shadows and some dimension to her hair. I find that the overall general look of the face, even though it looks terrible right now, is actually a really, really nice foundation for the pencils that will come next. And what I mean by foundation is that I've established all the light and dark areas. I've established the undertones where I want her face to be a little bit pink. And now I have a lot of information down. So that way when I go to use my pencils, I already have like a really good plan of where I'm going to do everything. So now I'm going to do the same thing to her hair. Her hair is actually going to be a blue color, like a purpley blue, but I'm using this warm gray undertone just to, again, establish where I think the darks will go. And mostly I'm using the guides from my drawing to determine where I'm going to put them, but I also add a lot more information with this marker than is just down on the page. Again, this fills in the white of the paper, so I don't really have to press and burnish that hard to get a nice smooth color. So I just love this marker process, just kind of figuring out where all the darks go first, and then working in over it with pencil after. A lot of people use other brands besides Copics. All alcohol markers tend to work the same way, where you can blend them a lot easier than water-based markers. But for this hair part, you could use a water-based marker just fine. It's just that I had this nice color that I didn't have in my water-based set, so that's why I wanted to use it. So now I'm just going behind and picking through all of the dark areas behind the tree there on her shoulder. So yeah, this is a real-time video. This will be a very long series. The reason why is my artwork does tend to take quite a long time to produce. But at the same time, I wanted to show you exactly my process without speeding it up. I think I do speed it up in one spot, but in general, this is all real time, so you guys can see there's no speeding up or slowing down. Everything is just as I do it, and that's really to give you an accurate sense of how long things take. But if you do want to like skip ahead and skip through. I'm trying to break these videos down into sections that are easier to digest. So that way you can kind of pick the spot you want to learn, and you don't have to watch the whole thing. So this first video is just the marker base. If you don't want to do a marker base, you can just skip ahead to the pencils. However, just keep in mind that the pencils will need a whole lot more work than what you'll see me do because I have this nice base layer down first. Yeah, so you can just see I'm picking through and finding all of the highlights and shadows all over. Now I'm going into her rocky shoulder kind of body. And I'm sorry I'm a little off camera here. Sometimes you get into a rhythm and you totally lose track. There we go. So another thing I want to say is if you're really struggling with something in art, like I had a hard time with markers for a long time. I didn't want to try them because I was intimidated. I'd say like give yourself some slack. Don't be hard on yourself if you don't want to do something or something isn't working out for you. Because I didn't use marker for like 30 years of my art. And then all of a sudden, I was gifted a set of markers and felt like, I can't let my art materials not get used. I can't let it go to waste, right? So I tried them out and I loved them. But what this has taught me is just like, be kind to yourself. Go easy on yourself throughout this whole process and this journey. Art is not easy. It's a big thing to learn. So let's swap on over to another color. Let's see what color. And what you see me doing off camera is I'm actually testing the color on a little swatch paper just to see what they look like before I go ahead and use them on the paper. Oh, okay, so I've swapped to a different type of alcohol-based marker. This is the Blick illustration markers. This is B2. And we're going to base out her hair, the bottom of her hair in this color. So yeah, what I was saying before, like for a long time I was such a perfectionist. I would try so hard to get my work to look perfect. And yeah, there we go. I show you the marker. There we go, it's focused. So it's ice blue is what they're calling it. And these are new markers. I just got them as a gift, so I'm trying them out for the first time here. Yeah, what I was saying before, I was a real perfectionist. I would stress out about my artwork and try and make everything look beautiful and perfect the first time, and I totally understand where you're coming from if you're struggling through that situation, only because a lot of artists go through that where they feel like their work has to be perfect or beautiful. But just keep in mind that color, light, shadow, texture, these are all really difficult things to get right, and that art is a learning journey. It's not something that you get good at overnight. But if you accept the challenge as something that you can learn and grow with and really enjoy, then I find that you'll end up sticking with it and getting better quicker, because the more fun you have, the more you do it, and the better you get. So, I've learned now, and my progression has sped up considerably now that I've stopped pressuring myself so hard to do perfect work. Instead, I'm just trying to have fun, and coloring has taught me this a lot. Like, just sit back, enjoy, don't stress out about how it looks in the end. Just try and have some fun and enjoy the process. And, if something great comes of it, then you're ahead of the game. But even if not, as long as you're learning something, I think that that's the most important thing, because the more you learn over time, the better you'll get, and it will come to you. So be kind to yourself, enjoy it, and just don't stress out if something doesn't turn out right. Nobody's perfect, and the people who you think are perfect, they're just hiding their mistakes. But in this process, I'm going to show you I make a lot of mistakes, but that's okay. I'm a human being too. Like, I go over the lines. Oh, I'm going to swap over to the B1. This is the pastel blue in the Blick illustration markers. These are alcohol-based. So they're similar to Copic's. They have a brush tip. The brush tip, let me just talk about the marker for a second here. It's not as flexible as the Copic markers. It's more stiff. So that's good if you have like a heavy hand and you use a lot of pressure. The Copics can be very responsive and sensitive. And if you have trouble like not using a light touch, then you might like these more stiff markers better. I liked both. It doesn't really bother me. They're just different. So yeah, anyway, that's the difference between the two. Otherwise, they seem to work the same. They have the same smell. I don't really like the smell too much. But other than that, they are really, really similar. I liked the colors in the Blick set that I got. So I just wanted to try a couple of these out. Yeah, going back to what I was saying before about perfectionism, I know a lot of people, they don't want to try things because they're worried about making mistakes or messing up. But if you're not messing up, then you're not learning. Mistakes are part of the process. So yeah, you just have to kind of let yourself experiment, have fun. Don't worry too much. Nobody's perfect, and that's okay. That's how life is so interesting and beautiful when we're learning and making mistakes. So, I also truly believe that a lot of people say that I'm so talented or whatever, and I don't believe in talent. I believe in skill and passion. That's where I've got all of my experience from. Is I just love art so much that I do it all the time, and so I have a lot of experience. Oh, I'm swapping over to Copic W3. Yeah, so I hate the word talent. I generally prefer to think of people as skilled. They've picked up and learned things along the way, and they are skillful. And those who are passionate and who love art tend to get skilled a lot quicker because they're doing it more. So I believe that anybody can learn. Art is not something that you're born with, that you're talented at. Some people pick it up quicker than others, that they have maybe a natural eye, but that is not required at all. You can get good at art no matter if you have a natural ability or if you got to work at it. It's just like anything else. It's like sports or music. You do have to practice and put the time in before you get really, really good. But that's, I think, what makes it fun, is that it's not an easy thing. It's a real challenge. So when you do achieve something, when you make an accomplishment out of yourself with something you've done, like, the reward and the feeling that you get when that happens is just amazing. So, yeah, anyway, that's my little inspirational talk. Sorry I go on about it, but I really do feel that way. I also really believe that colorists are artists. A lot of people, like some of my art friends have kind of looked down on on my coloring and my drawing coloring books, and they say, well, that's not art, you're just coloring. And I'm like, well, I'm using the art materials and I'm being creative, so I think it's art. And I kind of liken it to like, there are animators out there who are colorists, right? Like in Disney, there's a line artist and a colorist, and same with like graphic novels. So I really think that colorists are artists, and I think that we're just dealing with color, light, and texture, where the line art is just dealing with the composition and the shapes. So I believe that those are two equal parts of the artistic journey. And yeah, so colorists are artists. Consider yourself an artist and enjoy the art process. But yeah, don't be hard on yourself if you have a hard time. A lot of people have been saying to me that they could never do what I'm doing, and I just don't believe that. I think as long as you give it a shot and you practice, if you put in the effort, then you will definitely see some really, really great results. So don't be hard on yourself. Alright, so I'm just going through and putting shadows underneath all of these little flowers and leaves and things in her hair. And I'm using the warm gray mostly because I'm not quite sure exactly what color I want to be behind that section of her hair. You'll notice in this video I kind of like have like a hair color transition happening, and I haven't really decided everything. I'm kind of winging a lot of things with this particular drawing, but yeah, so when I'm not quite sure, I use a neutral color because you can always make it more colorful with the pencils later. Alright, so you can see I do jump around quite a lot, and I apologize for that. That's just, it's hard to change how you work just for a video. Yep, so I'm going to use the Tombow 990. And now these markers work a whole lot differently than the alcohol markers. The alcohol-based markers, they sort of like, you can layer and layer and they just stay the same color. But these ones, if you keep layering, they get darker and darker. So the other thing is that they do tend to be a little streaky. So if you do get streaky markers with the Tombows, don't stress out or fret. You can smooth it out with pencils later, and I'm probably going to end up streaking these out, and I'll show you how to fix that. But for now, I'm just going and adding some details and some darkness to the eyes and the eyelids. And so with visualization, it's a tool that a lot of people use both in art and also like sports and things to like picture what you're going to do before you do it. And what this does is it actually prepares you mentally for what you're going to do next. And I've just developed this technique over time to really reduce the amount of stress and also the amount of mistakes I make with my work. So with visualization, the key there is just to picture. So when I'm taking a break and looking back, what I'm doing is I'm actually like overlaying in my mind what I'm going to do with what's already there. So like in my mind, I'm looking at it, but I'm actually seeing it in the future, if you will. And this wasn't something that I could do very easily at first, but something that, again, it's a skill that I've developed. And there are a lot of different visualization techniques that you can do, but yeah, that's just one way where I can kind of figure out what I'm going to do before I do it. So you can see right here, it's going to start looking pretty messy and bad. And that's because this marker will get streaky, but I want to add some darks. And I don't have a dark color that's this color in my Copic markers. So I'm going to use this marker, and it will be streaky, but I'm not worrying too much about that. I'm just trying to get the base idea of where I want the darks in this cheek area to go. And also the plane of her forehead. You'll also notice that I use very saturated colors for her skin tone. This is actually the underlay for the pencils that will come next. And the pencils will end up muting and making it less saturated, especially when you go to burnish at the end. So I use brighter colors than what I wanted to end up looking like at the end, just to give her a sense of being full of life. Think of it sort of like the muscles and tissue under your skin is actually like really red from like blood and muscle tissue and all that, right? So I'm sort of giving her like a more saturated complexion than what I want to end up with, because when I go to burnish later, it will dull that down. I've also moved on into parts of the mountain waterfall area, just to sort of add in touches of the same color from her skin to those rocks. Trying to fix some streaky bits in her forehead. And now, it's not going to look great. I would never leave my work looking like this, but again, just establishing more information for when I go over it with pencil. This also gets rid of the white of the paper. Here I'm doing like the eyebrow shadows, so before I actually do the eyebrows in the color that they're going to be, I put the shadow of the hair on the skin. So this kind of gives a really nice realistic effect when you go to put the hair over it. Yeah, this won't look great right away, but it'll get there. Right now it looks pretty messy. That's okay. So we're going to swap on over to Tombow 620. There we go. And this is like a purpley blue color. And I'm just going to add a little bit to her eyes, because I think I want her eyes to be blue or purple. I'm not sure yet. So I'm just testing out that color combo with the marker to see how it will look. But I'm not doing a really heavy hand with that. I'm just sort of touching the paper just to kind of get a sense of it. Like I said before, I really am not sure exactly what I'm going to be doing with this page. So a lot of this is just experimenting and trying to figure it out. But I kind of liked that color. So now I'm going to bring it on into the hair. What's fun about this whole process is it really is like a discovery. I felt like this color really did flow well with the other blues that I put down before, that green blue and then the other blue, and now this is like a purpley blue. But I didn't plan for that. It just sort of happened throughout the marker process. So, another reason I like the marker is just really allows you to play around and get a sense of things. The one thing I will mention with markers is that you do have to really know where your lights and darks are going to go when you put them down. So the first thing I do when I do a marker page like this is I establish my light direction. So for here it's mostly top down, but it's coming slightly from the left as well. So once you determine your light direction, then you can just follow that throughout the whole drawing. So I'm warming up, or cooling down rather, that warm gray that I put down before and making it more purpley blue. And it's funny, this color looks so much more purple in context, but it is actually like a purple blue. But because it's sitting right next to all those other colors, it really does look purple, so I kind of like that. And now I've decided to use that same color for the clouds. So I'm just giving some dark tones to the clouds and kind of just basing them out as well. And the reason why is I sort of want the hair to blend into the clouds around her, almost like they could be clouds themselves. But again, the marker gets streaky. That's totally okay. We're going to go over it with pencil. But this does help get a good sense of how things are going to look pretty quickly. Alright. So now I've got a good sense of how those clouds will be light and dark and how they're going to flow with their hair. And when I drew this page, that's exactly the sort of effect that I was hoping to achieve, so I was pretty happy with it. So I'm just going to keep going with this color. Now that I see how it's working out, I figure I'll base out the rest of the clouds and get them to a point where they'll be easy to color with the colored pencil. Oh, I forgot some spots. Oh my. So I'm just going to go through and pick out the areas I forgot. Now I'm just looking for more spots, and I found a couple. Yep. So another thing that I want to say, a general art tip, is I like to work up the page all over. So you're going to see me pretty much base out the majority of this piece with marker in this one session. And the reason I like to do that is to get a sense of the overall color combinations and in general get a sense of everything about the page. Now I won't do everything. Like the flowers, I haven't decided on how I'm going to approach those. And the background, I will tackle that in a later session. But her face and all of the surrounding planet, I'm going to try and knock most of that out in this session. So that way I get an idea of how it'll look in the end. It's just nice to know what colors are going where. So that way when you go through and do all the more labor-intensive pencil work, you're not stressing about, what's going to be what color. You kind of have a really good sense of how it'll come together. So you'll see I'm going to go through and do a lot of the background now with this same color. I'm really loving this color. But actually I'm going to switch. Oh. Now I'm in 451. This is the Tombow again. This is a warmer blue. So I'm mixing the two together to get sort of a really nice true blue color. And now I'm going to go into the clouds. And actually I'm avoiding all the clouds. Anywhere where I want it to be light, and just doing the dark cloud areas and also like the areas under the clouds, like where there would be ocean or land or something. So I'm using this color for the shadows in the clouds and also the negative space around it. And all that'll be in shadow, so I'm going to do that. One little tip with Tombows, just something so that you know, the lighter the color, the less streaky it looks when you do large areas. So these light colors, they're really great for covering large areas, and I consider it sort of like toning the paper. You're just getting rid of the white of the paper, but you can add all sorts of darks over it later, or even lighten it up a little bit if you need to. But anywhere where you want it to be super light, you just want to avoid it. That way, the white of the paper can shine through your pencil work. So I'm going to swap back over to that 620, that cooler blue. It's like a purpley blue. There we go. Can't focus, but that's what it is. Oh, my camera. There we go. Well, anyway. Ugh, it won't focus. That's what it is, though. It's 620. And just touching up some small little spots. And going behind this big tree. And I know this page isn't super realistic. It's kind of surreal, but I've had this idea for a Mother Earth for a long time, and was really excited to put it in my book. I can't wait to see how other people interpret the page. Had so much fun coloring this one. Now I'm adding that purpley color into some of the cracks in her face. Almost like marble texture, or like cracked rock, or even it could be like roots of a tree. I don't know. There's so many things that could be. But I wanted to give her a sense that she is part of the earth. And of course, jumping all over, now I'm working on her hair again. I'm not organized. I'm really sorry about that. I will try to be better organized for future demos, but I can't make any promises. I really do jump around a lot and just sort of flow wherever my eye wants me to go. Now I'm adding that purple color into her skin as well. And doing some of the shadows with that purpley color, kind of balance out and neutralize some of the really warm colors I have down. And swapping over, I think, yep. I'm gonna go over to Tombow 020. This is like a warm yellowy color, kinda. And adding just some nice warm touches to some of the spots that I put purple down because it was too purple. So now I'm just neutralizing it. This is like an orangey yellow. And so if a color is too bright, then you can go ahead and use the opposite on the color wheel to neutralize it. But I really liked this color and felt that I could add it to the rocks below to give a warmth to these rocks. So you can see I'm just being real messy. But I'm using the flat of the marker to knock out all of that area all at once. And if you work quickly, you don't get streaks. Like, there's pretty much no streaks in that. But you have to work quick. You can't drag the marker too slowly. All right. Now we have most of the earth and the rocks and everything covered with a color. So how fast was that? If I were using pencil, I'd still be doing the face. And I'm adding a little bit of that yellow into her hair, just around the areas where... And so now that I've been diverted with that, I'm going to jump to 990. And I'm going to add some more shadows to the rocky area down here. And this is a nice peachy color. So just by layering the markers, you'll get darker and darker over time. I'm also adding some of this color into the water. And this will act as like a reflection, sort of, like reflective color in the water. So just adding little touches will be good. Now I'm going to swap to 451, this nice warm blue. There we go. It's focused. And I'm going to use that for the water down right below the waterfall. And this will tie it into to the cloudy shapes that are near it. And I'm avoiding the spots that I want to leave white. Let them just be the color of the paper. And I'm also bringing this blue up into the rocks that are close to the water. It's sort of like a reflected color. Alright, and then I'm going to use that same color to kind of tie it together. I'm going to use it for the clouds right back there behind the rocks. And filling in a lot of this really does feel good. It feels like now I know what's what. Sometimes when you have really complex line art and spots, it's good just to get a good base color down so you can separate out what's going where. So again, using really quick motion to avoid getting any streaks there. Alright, so I'm going to swap over to not 451, which one? 553. So this is a different color purple. It's like a purpley gray, and it's a little darker, I believe. And I'm going to use that to base out anywhere where the clouds aren't around the planet. And I'm not worrying about streaks. I'm taking my time and being careful, even if it does create some streaks, only because there's a lot of little tight nooks and crannies and little spots. And that's just how the drawing is, so I'm just going to take my time. Alright, I hope that you enjoyed this. Check out the next episode coming soon. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful, magical time coloring. Bye.